Hi, this is Dee Wallace from E.T. and Cujo and the Howling, and you're listening to the Horror Squad.
Hello and welcome back to the Horror Squad podcast. This is episode number 240. Tonight we're breaking down the top 10 of the 80s. I'm one of your co-host Todd. We have Steve and Joseph's back. Joey, what's up, buddy?
I'm excited to be back. It's feels like it's been forever. It's only been 2 episodes, but yeah, I'm excited. Super excited, for the 80s episode. I love these best of the decades episodes. They're just so much fun. And I'm definitely going to talk about Nope next week on my What Watch, because I have a lot to say about that movie, and I'm bummed I missed that episode. But I talked a lot about it in the spoilers on the Discord channel, so you can check out some of my thoughts on there. But yeah.
Very cool. Glad to have you back. And I was going to ask you Nope, but I guess we'll wait till next week.
Yeah, I'll wait.
Sweet.
We got a lot to talk about. It's a big episode.
Yep. There's a lot going on.
What about you, Todd? How are things over there in Texas?
Things are well. Hanging out with Asa, Raining Blood this weekend. We're going to do a movie night. I'm bringing Fright Night because he's never seen it, which is shameful. And I don't know what he's getting. But we're going to meet at his house, have a little movies, eat some Mexican food. This will be fun. And then let's see, on Sunday night, I was singing a classic Britney Spears song, Oops, I Did It Again. And I started walking down the stairs, and this is no lie how it went down. I went, oops, I did it again. Oh, fuck. And I fell because I slipped on the step right on, like, perfect on my left ass cheek. And I have like a softball size, pure black bruise. And I thought I fucking broke my tailbone. I was like laying on the steps fucking and like, So yeah, Britney Spears, she like did a telepathic push and I fell, and it's Britney, bitch. So that happens.
You were dancing pretty hard.
I guess I must have been, but yeah, Britney got me.
She'll do that to you.
Yep.
Her songs are catchy as hell. If you grew up in the 90s, man, that's some catchy stuff right there.
Yeah, I remember watching her videos on TRL, Carson Daly.
Classic.
Forever growing boys' needs.
Yeah,
What do you see?
Same old stuff. A lot of professional stuff that I can't talk about, but things are going pretty well. So I'm happy with all of that. Really excited about this episode. I love doing all these list episodes, whether it's the decade in the summer or the year in, the first episode of January, usually. Super psyched about it. I did a lot of research for this one. I watched a hell of a lot of 80s movies in preparation. Most of the stuff I'd seen before, but a few that I hadn't seen. So I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about the list and see what people have chosen on their lists. And yeah, so let's get right into it.
I'm ready, baby.
You got your handwritten Excel sheet?
I do.
Thing?
I do. Right here.
I wish
Right
you would
here,
use
baby.
Excel by
Right here.
That's funny. How are we doing? I forget how we did.
Every movie and
That's so funny.
system right there, baby.
Oh, that's crazy.
Took me about 3 hours, but I'm ready.
Oh
Oh
boy.
my God.
We got to get you on Google Docs or Google Sheets or whatever and just
Seriously.
let you go.
I actually listened to the 90s episode just so I could refresh myself what our format is. So the way we did it is we each went with our 3 honorable mentions in round robin style, and then we just went 10 to 1 round robin. So
Sounds
Todd,
good.
you want to start with your 3 I guess your first of 3 honorable mentions.
My number 13. Okay, so just my list though, it's this is tough. It was hard and it wasn't hard at the same time because there's some movies that you love, right, that we're all going to talk about at some point, but like the structure of them would shift like based on my mood. So I think looking at my list, it's going to be overall replay value, like how many times I can watch it, laugh at it, be scared by it, whatever it is. So that's a little bit of context for my list, and we'll get into it a little bit more later. But my first runner-up is 1987's Predator, and the reason is because I think it leans a little bit too much into action sci-fi. Granted, there's a ton of horror in there, and I fucking love Predator. I love it. highly quotable. Kills are amazing. Arnold Schwarzenegger, come on. It's like it's the macho mans of the 80s, those movies, right? So Predator is amazing. I just felt that it didn't have enough strict horror in it to make the list, but it could easily be someone's number one, and I wouldn't argue with it too at the same time. So Predator in at honorable mention number one.
Yeah, and just to note, speaking of Predator, Prey just came out on Hulu a couple weeks ago, and we covered it on the Let's XP Geek and Gaming podcast, and that episode is now out. So if you'd like to listen to me, Todd, and Mondo, a friend of ours, thoughts on Prey, check it out. It's
a great one.
Yeah, it's actually really good. So spoiler alert, it's very good.
Did you watch that yet, Joe?
I haven't. I
like
I've not. I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited. I haven't heard like one bad thing about it. So everyone seems to be loving it. So I'm definitely gonna check it out. I've heard it. I guess I've put off on it just because I heard it's not gonna like make the horror list at the end of the year. I don't know how you guys feel about that or not, but I heard it kind of leads more on the action sci-fi rather than horror. So I don't know. You guys agree with that or not, or if it's gonna make
it's pretty horror, I think.
Pretty horror. All right.
There's a lot of kills. There's a lot of gore. I guess it depends. Like, yeah,
is it in your top 10 like horror for the year?
I put it there because I think I also considered Predator for my list, so I guess it falls kind of in the same thing. So, but I think this one's actually in a way scarier than the original Predator. So yeah, I'd put it in my consideration for the year.
Yeah, and I'm going to sound like a hypocrite right now, but I would as well.
Okay.
But also because the year's weak. I mean, when you put it up to the 80s, there's like a ton of like straight only horror movies in there. But like, yeah, this year's kind of shitty so far. So it's a good one. It's a good one.
Well, I will say, Todd, we had, by the way, I mean, we're going to get into our master list later, but we had our biggest master list ever this year with 28 total lists were submitted. So thank you so much to everyone that did submit. And I will say, Todd, your honorable mention Predator was on 4 of the 28 master lists this year. So my first honorable mention is Child's Play. I mean, come on, it's Chucky, classic. I mean, spawned an entire franchise, and it's just I mean, it's a classic. The killer doll and just the voice of Brad Dourif, and it's just a really just like crazy. Like the first one is like straight horror too. Like there's not much comedy to be had in it. I mean, maybe a little bit. I mean, this franchise obviously as it progressed got kind of more silly as it went, but the first one is actually still holds up to be quite scary, and the practical effects of Chucky look amazing in it.
So for my 3, or the first of my 3, so these are all movies that at some point were considered to be on my top 10. And at some point were on my top 10, but for one reason or another, they got pushed out either with at the last minute or within the last few weeks. The first one is The Changeling. So we reviewed this movie 2 years ago for my birthday, I believe. Oh no, it was for our 100th episode. We each picked a movie, and The Changeling was my pick for that movie. It's a ghost film. I love ghost films. I think it's one of the best ghost films, and it's just one of those things where I have big nostalgia for it because there aren't a ton of great ghost films and stuff. So for a long time, it would have been in my top 10. But I think the last like 6-7 years have really given us some amazing ghost films, with the Conjuring series and Insidious and stuff like that. So I feel like The Changeling's impact has lessened over time because in comparison to these more modern ghost films, it's not as scary anymore and stuff like that. So I think it kind of bumped down a little bit in my list, but I still have huge nostalgia for it. I still really love it. I still urge people to at least check it out, especially if you like ghost films. So it's an honorable mention this year. So The Changeling.
Alrighty, next up is it's a little bit too sci-fi action for a strict horror list, and that's Aliens 1986. Aliens is one of my favorite movies of all time, period. It's fantastic. Sigourney Weaver is Ripley, is one of the best heroines of all time. Forget just heroines, man. Best hero of all time, period. Guys and girls combined. Love it. So yeah, a lot of love for it. It's got a great cast. It's got a great villain. It's got the Queen. Come on. So Aliens in there. Honorable mention number 2. And same thing with Predator. If someone had this at number 1, I would not argue with them either. Just for my personal taste, a little bit leans towards sci-fi a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with you, Todd, because like I didn't consider Predator or Aliens either for my list, but I agree. I think Aliens is one of the greatest movies of of the 80s. I just didn't feel like it was horror enough for me personally, but I don't blame anyone that put it on their list because there's definitely a lot of horror elements in it. All right, my next honorable mention is Stuart Gordon's Reanimator. What can you say about it? I mean, just a classic of the 80s. Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West is just amazing, and all the practical effects rule. You got the green fucking, agent or whatever you want to call it. It's just like iconic, right? Like you see it, you know exactly what it is still to this day. And Stuart Gordon's best movie, in my opinion. I mean, we had that Stuart Gordon retrospective. We watched like every Stuart Gordon movie ever, and I think it was his best, and that's why it makes an honorable mention.
That's a good choice, Joe. So good of a choice that is also my second honorable mention, Reanimator. I think everything Joe said is, I feel the same way. I think what ultimately got it off my list is I don't have huge nostalgia for it because I only discovered it like pretty late, like only a few years before I started the podcast. And then when we did Stuart Gordon, I revisited the whole series, and I do really like this movie. I think it's great. There are a lot of great things about it, but without that nostalgia factor, I think maybe that's why I pushed it out, but it would have easily could have been in my top 10 as well if you had asked me tomorrow or in 3 days. There's a lot to love about it, so that's my pick as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure my list is the same as yours, where these movies that are like, sitting at number 13, 14, 15 are still 4.5s on Letterboxd. Like, it's not like it's like 3.5. No, these are still amazing movies. It's just 80s is so stacked, it's hard. My last honorable mention, is 1982's The Thing, which 4.5 out of 5, man. I still love it. It's great, but it's not one that I could sit and watch. Like, I need years in between to watch it because I think the pacing is a little off at times. But I mean, practical effects are amazing. The stuff between Childs and McGrady at the end, the question mark still, who's infected. It's just good. It's great. Great cast, great setting in the Antarctic. I mean, you can't get any better than that. So The Thing, great movie, just narrowly missed out in the top 10.
Very nice. All right, my last honorable mention is one of the greatest horror comedy / zombie movies of all time, and that is Return of the Living Dead. Tarman is one of the best zombies I think ever put to screen. Just such a great character there. And I mean, the female zombie, like on the gurney there or whatever, just telling how like she's just like in pure pain and stuff like that. It's just like
it hurts to be dead.
Yeah. Right. It's just such like an unforgettable and iconic scene, and you got just a great cast. Linnea Quigley just dancing in the cemetery naked is just once again one of the most amazing scenes ever. There's just so many memorable and amazing scenes in that movie, and honestly, like, it was so close to making my top 10. It kept teetering on and off like several times, but it just barely misses out on making my top 10.
So my final honorable mention is one that was on my list for a long time, and only really when I decided to send it out that I push it out, like just at 11 essentially, and that's Creepshow. I have a lot of nostalgia for Creepshow. I watched it a lot growing up. I had it on VHS, I had it on DVD, I have it on Blu-ray now. I just really always enjoyed watching it. It's an easy watch for me. It's one that I could put on really at any time and be entertained. The problem with Creepshow is that I don't love all of the segments. I love the Father's Day segment. I love the segment with Ted Danza and Leslie Nielsen, stuff like that. The Jody segment with Stephen King is okay. It's not great. The Crate is okay, and the Bugs one is okay. But I guess because I don't love all the segments, I decided that maybe it should be off. If I had loved all the segments, or at least one more segment, which I thought was brilliant, it would have been on. So still love the movie, and that's Creepshow.
Hot take. I think Creepshow 2 is the better movie, actually. So
I don't personally.
I'm in the minority.
No, I'd agree with that one because Chief Woodenhead, right? Stowe.
Yeah,
Raft is
Chief
dope.
Woodenhead in the Raft, yeah. And the Hitchhiker is.
Oh
great
yeah.
too, I think.
And I just didn't like the Roach one in Creepshow Part 1.
Yeah. Jordy Verrill is like I didn't love the Jordy Verrill.
It's like either. Robert Englund. He's not a good actor.
And Joe and I saw The Field where that was filmed this year.
We did.
Super randomly, they just drove by.
Oh, really?
That's the field where the Jody Verrill thing was filmed.
Let me get some dirt. Hold on.
Yeah, no, it's just one of those things, I guess. And to this day, I've never seen Creepshow 3. I just can't find it anywhere.
Neither have I. And I
So
heard it's not worth it.
I found a
I-
DVD of it at a swap meet one time for $1, and I bought it and then ended up throwing it away without watching it.
All right. Are you ready for the top 10
list.
1980s?
The list. Are we
This
gonna
is
do
it.
the people's first or ours? Round
No, let's
robin
do
again?
ours first. Yeah, we'll do. Yeah.
All right. Coming in at number 10 for me is one of Joe's honorable mentions, and that's Child's Play from 1988. Brad Dourif, man, like his voice. We're gonna have a lot of iconic stuff in this list. Icons. He's one of them. Andy Barclay is amazing. It's just fucking. It's good, man. You got the cop. I forget who plays him. Fucking Jerry from Fright Night. He's in there. It's just
Chris Sarandon.
Chris Sarandon. There you go. It's just a fun movie, and it created Chucky, who's like one of the. There's icons, right? There's Jason, Freddy, Mike, and Chucky. So Child's Play is awesome, and it's my number 10.
Well, my number 10 also brings us a horror icon. And Todd, I know you might not be happy with this, but my number 10 is Hellraiser. Pinhead. I mean, say what you will, but Pinhead is just an absolute horror icon. And I don't love the Hellraiser franchise, but I really do love part 1. The whole Frank storyline is just so like creepy, and just his makeup is awesome. And then when you finally do get the Cenobites at the end, I mean, Ashley Lawrence puts out a great performance here too, but when you get to the Cenobites, they're fucking awesome when you see them. I mean, all 4 of them are just amazing, and they spawned a franchise that became iconic in the entire 80s. So that's why it makes my number 10.
Awesome. Just before I start my list, I kept my annual rule that I'm only putting on 1 per franchise. So when I talk about that movie, not right now, but at some point, I had to pick between 2 movies. There's 3 of them on this list where I could have put 2 of them on, and I decided not to. But this one actually is going to come as my first big surprise of my list, because a few weeks ago when we were trying to guess what would all be our number 1s, I think people thought this would be my number 1, and here it is at number 10, and that's George Romero's Day of the Dead. So I love George Romero's films. I mean, it's no secret for people who listen to the podcast, but I think Day of the Dead is, in a way, one of the weakest ones of the original trilogy. Night is iconic. Dawn's my favorite. I actually just watched Day of the Dead to kind of confirm these thoughts. When it's good, it's amazing. Like when the zombies are attacking, it's amazing. And the stuff with Bub is really great. But there's a large portion of that movie where they're just arguing with each other, the military and the scientists. And that doesn't really appeal to me all that much. Like people just arguing and arguing and arguing for what seems like forever. So there's a big pacing issue in Day of the Dead. Now, the last 20 minutes are some of my favorite 20 minutes in film, but everything that comes before it, it's kind of slow. It's kind of like just people arguing. So that's why it's so low on my list, but I had to include it somewhere on my list because of my love for Romero. So Day of the Dead at number 10.
Yeah, I hear you with that one. All right, number 9 for me is 1980's Maniac. This is probably the dirtiest movie on my list. Like it's just fucking gross. Like he's like in The Undertaker. He's just
he's so greasy. Naturally greasy.
He's the original Greasy Strangler for sure. It's just good. It's fucking legit. The remake's good too, but obviously we're not talking about that. But the original one is just like the performances are great. Like New York City is just like so fucking grimy. His performance is just fucking gross. The kills are amazing, and there you go. So I just want to give him the respect he deserves. Joe Spinell is just amazing in it. So yeah, Maniac comes in my number 9.
Very nice. My number 9 is the classic Pet Sematary, which we were also doing in the book club this month. So stick around.
I started it too.
Yeah, nice. I started the audiobook.
Me too. I did the same one.
Michael C. Hall. Are you doing the Michael C. Hall one?
Yeah, he's good.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, he is. He's a great narrator. But to the movie Pet Sematary, this one definitely plays hugely on the nostalgia for me because I watched it at like a very young age and it like absolutely terrified me. Zelda is one of the most terrifying things like I had ever seen put to screen at the time. I used to have nightmares about her when I was a child. I still think she is terrifying to this day. Just so many memorable scenes. Obviously, the Gage being hit by the truck, like iconic scene and just affected so many people in the 80s. Even my mother, just still to this day talks about how disturbing that was for her seeing it. Yeah, I mean, it's just like so memorable and iconic. And when me and Steve went to the Stephen King tour, I went up and saw the house and Judd's house across the street, and it was just such a cool experience. And yeah, I mean, I love that movie. I know that I guess it does have like problems and stuff like that, but to me, like I just love it.
Real quick, do those locations still look pretty similar?
Yeah, the house looks identical.
Sweet.
Like the Crandall house. That's their names, right? Crandall, I believe. Or is it?
Something like that.
No, that's Judd, right? Is Judd Crandall? Is Judd
Yeah,
Crandall
that's right.
Oh, Creed. The Creed house.
Creed, yeah.
The Lewis. The Creed house looks identical. Judd's house doesn't look anything like it did, because I from what I had read, they built his house in front of like the original house, so his doesn't look the same. But the Creed house, fucking like identical. The fields there, that Gage runs into the street and everything. So it's that, honestly, it's worth like going to see if you're in the area for sure.
Cool. So my number 9 was one of Joe's, I believe, honorable mentions, and that's Return of the Living Dead. Another classic. Absolutely love it for all the same reasons Joe said. For those who don't know, I build a Limax like Spooky Town Village every year. And when I first started, I decided to put this movie on in the background to build my my town, and then it would sit down and watch the rest of it. And that's just become an annual tradition for me. So I watch it every single year when I build my Limax town, because it's an easy movie for me to watch. Even when I was a kid, very memorable movie for me when I was a kid, and I'm sure you can all imagine why if you've seen it. I was very, a lot of good things about it when you're a kid. So yeah, I love it. This great effects, great characters, memorable lines, and it's the one that I'll keep watching every year until I die, essentially. So yeah.
And then you become a zombie.
Right.
All right, my number 8 is a 1988 fun one, Night of the Demons. One of my favorite scenes in horror, period, is the wide shot of Angela dancing to the strobe light and the song, and fucking Sal's just like in the corner, like looking at her like, what the fuck's happening? Who, justice for Sal, did not deserve to die in that fucking movie. The pirate fucking guy lived, of all people. He didn't do shit. But Night of the Demons is fucking super good, super fun. It's on Halloween. It captures the Halloween feeling. Angela's a great demon. Linnea Quigley, once again, who we've mentioned a couple times for returns in there. So Night of the Demons, super fun. Captures the 80s spirit perfectly. So that's my number 8.
Excellent choice, Todd.
Thank you.
Excellent, because my number 8 is also
Yeah.
Night of the Demons. And for all the exact same reasons you said, Hull House is just such like an iconic house, and just the fact that they filmed it like in an actual house, like it just oozes like spookiness throughout. I think it's like it's like a perfect Halloween movie. Like I watch it every single Halloween season, and just like a great cast, like Linnea Quigley, Amelia Kincaid. Like it was just a really like fun. The demons all look really great. The makeup looks great, and it's just like it just like is so 80s in like the perfect way, So that's why it makes my number 8.
Hold on, I want your impersonation of the pig guy. Stooge.
I'm ready to party.
Classic.
That's classic.
Eat a bowl of fuck.
So my number 8 is not Night of the Demons. It is actually a movie that I was not sure about, so I rewatched it and was very impressed by what I saw, and that is The Fly remake. So I remember it being good, but it wasn't like top 10 good. But it had been years since I had seen it, so I decided to check it out. It's Jeff Goldblum playing, the Brundle Fly character, and it's amazing. The makeup in that movie is so fantastic. You see him deteriorate throughout the movie, and the amount of like different variations of what he looks like is really impressive, and it just gets better and better. Like just when you think he's not going to get any creepier, he comes back the next scene even creepier than he was before. And the whole movie is like that. He just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. The fact that they had to change, and make the makeup evolve throughout the film is just really, really impressive. And I absolutely loved rewatching this. I'm glad that this, decade list made me revisit it, because it was totally worth it. So my number 8, The Fly.
Yeah, he eats that dude's hand. Good scene. I didn't even remember that one. So There's one I missed. All right, coming in at number 7 is 1981's An American Werewolf in London, one of the best, period, werewolf transformation scene of all time. He's just sitting there in a chair, perfect lighting. There's no like concealing shadows. It's all done practically right in front of you, which is awesome. The nurse is hot. Also has some heart too. Like his buddy coming back is like a ghost haunting him, telling him what he needs to do. And the fact that he's, American, fish out of water in England, and he's going through this horrific thing. Just a great fucking movie all around. So American Werewolf in London.
Excellent choice, Todd. Excellent choice. Because my number 7 is also
Oh,
American Werewolf in London.
2 in a row.
It's a beautiful thing. We got an ESP thing going on right now. Yeah, I mean, the greatest werewolf transformation of all time. It has never been topped and probably never will be. Yeah, I mean, just it's such an iconic scene. And yeah, I mean, that's why really it makes my number 7. I mean, it's a great movie. And other than that as well, the chemistry between the two lead actors is just great. And the makeup besides the werewolf transformation is awesome throughout. So yeah, that's why it makes my number 7.
All right. My number 7 is a movie you guys didn't even consider. So I'll be the only one with it on my list. And that is Predator. I think it's horror enough. When I used to collect Fright Flicks, which was a trading card from the 1980s of horror, like different scenes and stuff, The Predator was one of the 4 cover like posters along with a few others. I just absolutely love this movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger is my favorite actor of all time. I can watch anything he's in, almost anything he's in, looking at you, Hercules in New York, and just absolutely have a blast with it. This movie is just so good. And it could have easily just been these like buff dudes killing some shit and it would have been fine. But you actually get like hearts and characters and stuff like that in the movie. So, it's surprising. And I really, really love it. I think it's a classic. And I'm glad that Disney making Prey, everyone, when Disney bought Fox, they got a lot of horror properties under their wing. And a lot of people thought those horror properties would essentially go and die because Disney bought them, and they're proving that that's not the case with Prey. So I'm happy to see that horror is going to keep thriving even under that banner. So Predator, amazing film, number 7.
I agree, man. It's a great one. All right, number 6 is a tricky one because it's a part 4 out of a series, and that's 84's Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Friday the 13th is my favorite series, period. I love them all. Some of them are obviously not as good as the others, like Manhattan and Jason Goes to Hell, stuff like that. But overall, I love the series. And part 4, I think, is the best one out of there. It's the only one that has like a real heart to it, where, Corey Feldman, Tommy Jarvis, his family, their dynamic is amazing. Jason, played by Ted White, is super imposing. Fantastic kills in there. But yeah, if you came out and told me part 1 was your favorite, cool. Part 3 is your favorite, cool. Those are all from the 80s, obviously. 2 is amazing too. I wouldn't argue with you, but I think part 4 is the best out of those, the final chapter. So that's number 6.
Excellent choice, Todd. Excellent choice.
No, you're
Because
not
my
going 3 in a
number
row.
6 is not Predator. No, my number 6 is a PG horror movie and one of the greatest PG horror movies of all time. Poltergeist. I mean, Poltergeist rules. Like, I love Poltergeist so much. This is definitely another nostalgia pick for me. Watched this one really young, and it scared the shit out of me. You hear "they're here," and you know exactly where that is coming from. Just so many iconic scenes. Just when the father just freaks out at the end, when he's like, "You son of a bitch! You moved the headstones, but you left the bodies," and he just flips out. That scene is so good. The real dead bodies in the swimming pool scene, so iconic, so good. The movie is amazing, but honestly, the backstory of that movie is so interesting as well. The whole Poltergeist curse, if you look into that, is like really, really interesting, and it spawned some good sequels. Poltergeist 2 is really good as well. I have nostalgia for Poltergeist 3. It's not a great movie, but it did spawn a franchise, and a pretty solid franchise. But that original Poltergeist, I didn't even mention Tangina, who is just like a fantastic character in all of herself. Just, man, and then the ghost coming down the stairs at that one point when the dude rips his fucking face off, just like so good. So that's why it's my number 6.
My number 6 is the first of 3 movies that I had to pick one over another from the same franchise and had a hard time deciding. But ultimately, I went with The Evil Dead, the original. Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 could have been both on my list. I love them both a lot. They're different from each other. You know, one's made with like no budget, one's made with a little bit more budget. But ultimately, The Evil Dead really inspired me when I was in film school because of how low budget it was and the way that they had to essentially create different techniques to make it the way it was. And I'll never forget reading Bruce Campbell's book, If Chins Could Kill, Confessions of a B-Movie Actor, where he details kind of what they went through in the filming of Evil Dead. And I have so much respect for that movie. And beyond all of the backstage and like behind the scenes stuff, the movie itself is fantastic. The effects are great. It's spooky. It's got great camera work. It's got just great everything. I absolutely love this movie. And like I said, Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 could have been on this list, but I went with Evil Dead. So that's my number 6.
Yeah, great book. Fantastic book. It's a must. All right, my number 5, top 5 time, which honestly, like this 5 could shift around based on what's going on, but I'm gonna leave it at this. So number 5 for me is 1985's Day of the Dead. Like Steve, gigantic Romero fan. It does have issues though. The acting is pretty bad at times, you know, like the delivery of lines is pretty bad. There's some actually pretty bad pacing issues in this, but it's got Bub, it's got fantastic zombies. I love the opening scene when they're in Florida and they fucking land and there's a bunch of like you know, like empty movie theater, empty street. The newspaper flies and it shows the dead walk and stuff like that. And you have an alligator coming out of a bank that if you look closely, his mouth is tied and then they didn't kind of hide it that well. But I love it, man. All the bullshit aside of that movie, it's still really good. And then like you mentioned, see the final 20 minutes where the zombies are just unleashed by the angry fucking guy is fantastic. Plus you got Joe Pilato, Captain Rhodes, choke on him when he's being torn apart. It's just amazing. So Day of the Dead, 85. Number 5.
Is there food? All right, my number 5.
What? Frankenstein?
My number 5, we heard earlier from Steve, and it is the remake of The Fly. Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the greatest remakes of all time. Definitely one that surpasses the original, which the original had Vincent Price in it. So I mean, that is tough to surpass. But this one does in pretty much every way. Man, Jeff Goldblum's performance is so good in this, as well as Gina Davis's performance. I mean, both just put on. I mean, who would have thought like at the end you would actually like feel like emotions towards this fly and their love story? Like it really does capture like the emotions really well. The makeup effects are just amazing and disgusting all at the same time. Yeah, The Fly rules, and that's why it's my number 5.
My number 5 is another one where I could have picked 2 from the same franchise. And this one I had to pick between which one I think is better versus which one I like more. And I was really debating between the two. Ultimately, I went with the one that I think is a better made film, and that is A Nightmare on Elm Street. 3 is actually my favorite of the series, but 1 I think is the best of the series. It's just so classic, you know? You have the introduction to Freddy, you have the whole story with Nancy, and you have some of the most iconic shots are all in the first one, you know? The bathtub scene, the stretched out arms, like all that stuff is just so iconic. The music's absolutely fantastic. Direction, the characters, you got Johnny Depp in here, you know, one of his first roles. It's an absolutely amazing movie. It's one I've seen many times over the years, and I still enjoy it to this day. So Nightmare on Elm Street at number 5.
Alrighty, I have a feeling that one's probably going to be number 1 in the ultimate list. 1 or 2. Anyway, number 4 for me is Steve's number 6, which is 1981's The Evil Dead, starring Bruce Campbell, which is everyone's favorite horror icon or actor, or one of. Directed by Sam Raimi. Yeah, for all the stuff Steve said, man, it's a great freaking movie. There's so many cool shots. Ash slams a freaking thing in the ground, and the lightning goes off, and it's just amazing. You got Freddy Krueger's glove in the background, which is a fun little nod. The Deadites are all cool. The stop motion sounds on paper like it'd be cheesy, but it's fucking dope. The pencil and the ankle shot. It's just the tree rape out of nowhere. Like, this movie does not shy away from things. It's like once it starts, it doesn't stop, and it only escalates from there. And Ash just like eats shit the entire movie, and he's a great character. I can understand why people like part 2 better. And it's a great film, and part 3, of course, Army Doctor is a great film as well. But I think 1 is the closest one to like a traditional just horror movie, because, you know, 2 is comedic and so is 3. So I'm going with Evil Dead, 81. Man, Great movie.
Excellent choice, Todd. Excellent choice. Because my number 4 is also The Evil Dead.
3? 3 in our
my
top
number-
list? Ooh.
Yes, that's right.
No, I
baby.
mean 3 the same. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Connected minds right now. I love it. But yeah, I mean, everything basically Todd just said is why I love it as well. It's just like, man, like those shots like going through the trees are just so iconic, and just like they were just like kind of revolutionary for the time. Yeah, I mean, just Bruce Campbell, fantastic in it. The troll witch thing or whatever you want to call it, the deadite in the basement, locked in the basement, is just terrifying, and how she manipulates her voice throughout the movie, it's just so creepy. The tree rape is one of the most unforgettable scenes I think I've ever seen. And yeah, just everything about it is great, and I'm the same way. Like I toyed between 1 and 2 for my list as well, but I just feel like 1 is just the more iconic, I guess, of the 2, so that's why it made my number 4.
Well, you guys are picking the same movies every round. I'm picking stuff that doesn't even make your lists. My number 4 is Aliens. I don't know what the hell you guys are smoking. This movie is so fucking horror. Like, there's xenomorphs everywhere. There's blood. There's guts. There's just everything I love about a horror movie. Yes, it does skew to the action genre more so than its predecessor, Alien. But I think there's a ton of horror in this when you see the alien queen and just the way that everything happens in this movie. What a fucking fantastic movie. It's so good. I could watch this every single year. It's just so fun. Bill Paxton is such a hoot. Of course, Sigourney Weaver, one of the best icons in film history, period. It's just the way it is, and I absolutely adore this film. It's rare that I think a sequel is better than the original, but this one absolutely blows the first one out of the water. Now, the first one's great for sure, but yeah, absolutely love Aliens. So that's my number 4.
The Aliens is fucking amazing. It's like perfect action hybrid. My number 3, which I presume is gonna be Joe's number 1, but no spoilers, is 1980s The Shining. I mean, performances, great. And I hear the argument Jack Nicholson looks crazy from the beginning. He's not crazy. He's just an annoyed dad. All the dads out there, you understand, we get annoyed. People are in the back seat nagging you and stuff, and you're just trying to drive the car on this fucking windy road. Yes, you're annoyed. The imagery, the music, the ballroom music, it just like gets in your head and stays there. Bartending scenes, everything about this movie is amazing. Shelley Duvall, the background, The Shining itself, little fucking Danny, The Shining. It's fantastic. So I'll leave it at that.
Very nice. My number 3 is going to be the original A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I was torn the same as Steve on this, because I have more fun with part 3 Dream Warriors, but like without part 1, there would be no part 3. And it's just so iconic. It basically spawned like the slasher genre of the 80s. I mean, obviously I know Halloween came before it and whatnot, but once Freddy came out, like he became the 80s. Like he was everywhere, just marketed like crazy and stuff. And that, without the original Nightmare on Elm Street, none of that would ever happen. And there's just so many iconic scenes. Nancy's bathtub scene, the girls on the jump rope, Johnny Depp getting sucked into the bed with the blood, Tina on the fucking wall just covered in blood, just like, yeah, I mean, it's such a good movie. Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy is my favorite franchise personally of the slasher franchises, and yeah, that's why it makes my number 3.
My number 3 is the second remake on my list, and that is 1982's The Thing. Fantastic movie in every way. I love the setting of the Arctic. I think it just gives it this energy that I absolutely love. The claustrophobia of kind of being stuck there in the isolation. And I love the characters. Kurt Russell's one of my favorite actors. He's just so good in this. The body horror is so good in it. Like, it's so good. There's just a lot to love about this movie. There's also some good action, some suspense, some mystery, what's going on. I love this movie to death. It's one that I was happy to revisit for this list, and yeah, I just can't say enough good things about it. So The Thing.
Very nice. All right, number 2 is one that was sitting at number 1 for a while there, but last minute I shifted it before sending the the list off to Joe, and that's 1985's Fright Night. Jerry is the main vampire. He's so fucking cool. He's suave. He's awesome. It's just like a really good coming of age tale, you know, where you got him moving in next door and he's like, what the fuck? There's a vampire mom. A vampire Jerry comes over, introduces himself. She invites him in. And now we know as horror fans, you can invite vampires in. They can come in whenever they want now. So I just love it. His girlfriend, Amanda Bierce, is really good in it. And it's just like, it's a cute movie, but it's horror, you know what I mean? There's cute like relationship stuff. Evil Ed's a really cool character that he's like the nerd he's picked on, then he becomes like a vampire under Jerry. He's got Jerry's familiar, which is kind of like a weird kind of sexual thing going on, I'm thinking, but I don't know, we'll leave it at that. But Fright Night, fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, you gotta see it. Fright Night, number 2.
Alrighty, my number 2 is John Carpenter's The Thing. I mean, I just love this movie. The practical effects are amazing. I personally think this is John Carpenter's masterpiece. Hot take. I know most people would say Halloween, but to me, like this movie's amazing from start to finish. I don't think there's really ever a dull moment. There's always something interesting going on. I just said it, but once again, the practical effects are just out of this world, and they still hold up to this day as some of the best practical effects I think ever put to screen. The blood testing scene is just absolutely iconic. You know, the McCready child stuff at the end is still being debated to this day, and yeah, that's why it makes my number 2.
My number 2 is one that we had an amazing episode of maybe like a year and a half ago, where we did this movie and the TV movie that they released later, and that's The Shining. The Shining is just a masterpiece in every way. The acting is just some of the best ever, like period. The music is fantastic. It scared the shit out of me as a kid. The Grady twins, just the imagery, and they don't really do anything. They just fucking stand there, and they're just creepy 2 little girls, you know? I mean, yes, you see them like getting wrecked and stuff, like really quickly, but that's not what scared me as a kid. It's just them at the end of the hallway, just standing there, just 2 little girls, no scary makeup, no nothing. Just the atmosphere sucked me in, even as a kid. It's just Kubrick, you know, he's a madman. If you know his directing style, it's absolutely insane. He like really mistreated actors and everything, and I hope it's never replicated. But this is, you know, one of the movies that we got out of him, and it's just an absolute masterpiece in every way. So number 2, The Shining.
Play with us, Steve, forever and ever. All right, my number 1 is 1985. I think 1985 is my favorite year of all time, film-wise. You got Fright Night, you got Fright Night, Day of the Dead, you got Back to the Future, and then you have my favorite movie of the 80s, which is The Return of the Living Dead. Is this the best movie, technically speaking, on my list? No, I think that would go to The Shining, if we're being like pure cinema wise. But as far as replayability, rewatchability, Return of the Living Dead is hilarious. It's got great violence. It's got great one-liners. Send more cops, send more paramedics. It hurts to be dead. You got Spider, who's a great character. You got Trash. You got Suicide. You got all the freaking hipsters. You got Freddy, played by Tom Matthews from Friday 13th Part 6. I just love it, man. And like you guys too, and like a lot of young men our age, it was Linnea Quigley was like, like an awakening, you know, for a lot, or, you know, maybe just a reassuring for some and things like that. But either way, total babe. Tarman, so fucking good. And then the Clue Gallagher, the whole scene where they're talking about how Night of the Living Dead was a true story and that they accidentally shipped the bodies to you need a medical supply, and that's where they get the zombies from. It's like everything about this movie is fantastic. It's great setup. The cemetery is awesome. And then the music where they burn the body, you think it's done, but the smoke goes up in the air and it starts raining and bringing it back down to earth through the cemetery, and you see the water trickling into the graves. Just fucking perfect. So Return of the Living Dead, I love it. Like I said, technically the best movie on my list. Nope. But I love it. So number 1.
Very nice. And my number 1 probably comes as no surprise to anybody, is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Just to me, it's like the perfect horror movie. It's my favorite horror movie of all time. The Overlook Hotel is basically its own character in this movie. It's such a great atmosphere throughout all of the different rooms. Jack Nicholson was just a tour de force performance, just amazing. All the side characters are amazing too. Scatman Crothers is fantastic in this, and Shelley Duvall, just the what she was put through, but her during this movie, but the performance she gave I thought was fantastic, and just so many iconic scenes throughout. Of course, the Grady twins, and the here's Johnny through the door, them Jack stalking Danny through the maze. I mean, I could go on and on and on with this movie, and it's just so layered, and there's just not even to mention the woman, that room 237 woman in the bathtub and stuff. Just, man, like there's so much to unpack with this movie, and it's a movie that you could watch over and over again and just pick up new things. Every time you watch it. I mean, they made a documentary on it, about all the different conspiracy theories and stuff that you could pick up through the movie. So that's why it makes my number one, and it's just, I love it.
For my number one, to me, it was never even debated. When I started my 1980s list, I started this movie. It's the movie I've seen the most in my life. It's the movie I have the most nostalgia for. It's the movie I used to play with the merch when I was a kid. Used to watch the cartoon that was based on it. I used to play the video games, and I fucking love it to this day. I've seen it well over 100 times and still watch it at least 3-4 times a year. And that is Ghostbusters. To me, no doubt that this was going to be my number one. It's just good in every way. I love it to death. It is such an iconic film, important to film history. It's both like scary. I mean, the first ghost, the librarian ghost, is a fucking scary scene. And the fact that this is geared kind of towards kids a little bit is like frightening when you think about that, just how scary she is. Slimer is even kind of a glutton but serious character, but then at the end they go with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, which in the context of the movie just makes sense. They try to think of something that wouldn't be harmful, and it becomes this big monster, and the way that he turns from this lovable cute marshmallow monster to this like evil on fire demon is just so good. I mean, it's got everything. It's got ghosts, it's got a zombie-ish character, it's got demon dogs, it's got everything. I fucking love this movie to death. I quote it all the time, and I think it's the best movie from the 1980s easily. So that's Ghostbusters.
5 out of 5 movie. One that I didn't even consider. Damn it. Great movie.
Who are you gonna call?
All right. What's he say? Who brought the dog, or who brought the pooch, or something like that?
Yeah.
He has a party with like the dudes he does the taxes for. It's like, you fucking nerd.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so are we ready, folks, for the
it.
ultimate list of the 1980s, ladies and gentlemen? You want to know what the best 10 horror movies of the 1980s are? Look no further, because this was our biggest, most accomplished list yet. We had 28 total lists submitted. So in comparison, we had 21 for our 90s list last year when we did that. So a huge thanks to every single one of you that submitted a list. Obviously, all of our Discord followers, as well as fellow horror podcasters as well. So thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to put together this ultimate list. So how the ultimate list works, for those of you who may be new to this, what I do is, if it is a 10th place vote, I give it 2 points. And if it is a first place vote, I give it 20 points, and so on and so forth. It goes 2 down. So a second place would get 18 points, third would get 16 points, and so far down the list. Add all those points up, and whoever has the most points, obviously, is your number one movie. All right, so let's start with our honorable mentions. I'm going to do 15, because why not? It's the 80s, so let's do our top 15. So first 5 honorable mentions, I should say. I'm not doing 15 honorable mentions, but you know what I mean. All right. So our first honorable mention is from 1982, and it is Creepshow. Creepshow received 66 points. It was on 7 of the 28 lists, and it peaked with 1 fourth place vote. Our next honorable mention is 1986's The Fly. The Fly received 76 points, was on 9 of 28 lists, and peaked with 1 third place vote. Our next honorable mention, one I don't believe that made any of our lists, 1987's The Lost Boys. Right? That didn't make it any
No.
of our list, right?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Nope.
So the Lost Boys received 78 points, was on 6 of the 28 lists, and peaked with a first place vote. Our next honorable mention is 1985's Fright Night. Fright Night received 84 points, was on 8 of the 28 lists, and peaked with a first place vote. And our final honorable mention, I think surprising, it didn't make any, I guess, of our 3 lists, but it did, sequel did, and it is the original 1980s Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th received 90 points, was on 8 of the 28 lists, and received 1 second place vote.
Pretty solid honorable mentions there. I don't
Yeah.
disagree with any of them. I mean, some obviously I didn't put it on my list or anything. Lost Boys is one I rewatched, and I think it's a good movie, but it's not one of my favorites. And I'll have more to say about Friday the 13th later in another question. So I'll save it for
All
later.
right.
Solid.
All right. Awesome. All right. So let's get into it, folks. Here we go. On the master list, I will say 63. This is our top 10. 63 different movies received a vote in this list. In comparison of our 90s list, there were 66 movies. So just a few down from the 90s, and 12 movies received a first place vote. And our 90s list, also 12 movies received a first place vote. So nothing different there. All right, so let's start us off with number 10 from 1986. And it is an iconic sequel that me and Todd didn't consider horror enough, but you guys all did. At number 10 comes Aliens. Aliens received 100 points, was on 8 of the 28 lists, and peaked with a second place vote. Coming in at number 9, 1985's Return of the Living Dead. Return of the Living Dead also received 100 points, but it was on more lists, 9 of the 28, and did peak at a first place vote, which was Todd's, of course. So that is why I put it at number 9 over Aliens. Coming in at number 8, 1984's Who You Gonna Call? Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters received 104 points, was on 7 of the 28 lists, but of those 7 lists, 4 put it as their number 1 movie of the 1980s.
Because people didn't consider it, I think. That's
yeah.
If people had considered it, I think it would have been much higher, but I get it.
Probably, yeah. Yep. All right, coming in at number 7 is 1981's The Evil Dead. The Evil Dead received 118 points, was on 11 of the 28 lists, and peaked with 2 third place votes. Coming in at number 6, 1987's Evil Dead 2, ladies and gentlemen, received 128 points, was on 11 of the 28 lists, and peaked with 4 third place votes. So there you go. You have one franchise getting 2 movies on your 80s list. All right. Are we ready for our top 5? Any thoughts before we get into our top 5? How do you feel about the bottom 5?
Strong bottom five.
Surprises?
Yeah.
There's nothing that I would argue. It can go lower, it can go higher, in my opinion. So
I'm surprised that's the first time we have 2 of the same franchise on the list, right? I think.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Yep. And pretty I think surprising in some ways that the sequel was over the original. It usually doesn't happen very often. So pretty cool.
I know you already know the answer, but I wonder if we're gonna get 2 Nightmare on Elm Streets on there, because a lot of people love 3 and 1.
We shall see. We shall see. All right, here we go. Top 5 of the 1980s. Coming in at number 5, 1982's Poltergeist. Poltergeist received 130 points, was on 10 of the 28 lists, and peaked with 2 second place votes. Coming in at number 4, 1981's An American Werewolf in London. American Werewolf in London received 136 points, was on 13 of the 28 lists, and peaked with a first place vote. Top 3, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Your top 3 horror movies of the 1980s. Coming in at number 3 is 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street. And let me just say, listen to this bump up, ladies and gentlemen, because the top 3 were absolute runaways. So number four is An American Werewolf in London, received 136 points. Well, our number 3, A Nightmare on Elm Street, received 254 points, almost 120
that's a
point
jump.
bump. It was on 17 of the 28 lists and peaked with 4 first place votes. Coming in at number 2, 1982's The Thing. The Thing received 276 points, was on 17 of the 28 lists, and received the most first place votes of any movie with 6, which leaves us with our number 1 movie of the 1980s based on you guys and the 28 lists. 1980s, The Shining. The Shining received 282 points, was on the most lists, 21 of 28 master lists, and received 4 first place votes. So number 2 and number 3 was decided only by 6 points. So literally it could have, gone one way or the other. It literally was decided by one list. That's how close those top 2 movies were. But there you have it, folks. So Todd, Steve, let me hear your initial reaction to this list.
No surprises to me, really. I had a feeling The Shining would probably make it out on top, and if not, I thought The Thing would be the one to maybe dethrone it. Yeah, no, I think it's a great list. Honestly, it's a solid list. Surprising that for such a heavy horror decade, that the points are so high for these movies, because there's so much to choose from that seems a lot of people pick the same ones on a lot of lists. So it's impressive.
Yeah, I mirror that. Probably the weakest one, in my opinion, on the list is Poltergeist. Just because I didn't watch it when I was young, it was a relatively older watch, so it was like you've already seen stuff at that point. Not that it's a bad movie by any means, but that's probably my only surprise is how high Poltergeist went. But other than that, fuck, man, this is a really good list.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know, Todd, you were asking about Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors, which I have here somewhere. I will say, there was a lot of movies that came really close to making the honorable mentions. Here we go. Dream Warriors was one of them, actually. It was only on 4. It only made 4 of the lists. I think obviously everyone went the Nightmare on Elm Street route rather than the Dream Warriors route. But on the 4 list, it did receive a first place vote, and it also received a second place vote and a fourth place vote as well. And it received a total of 54 points, which, Creepshow was at my last honorable mention at 66 points. So it was one that was semi-close to making the honorable mentions. Another big one that was very close to making the honorable mentions was Gremlins, which I don't believe was on any of our lists, right? Yeah.
That's a good movie,
So
though.
yeah, Gremlins was actually on quite a few lists. It was on 7 lists, none of them super high. It did receive 1 second place vote and received 66 points. So very close. Obviously, Creepshow got 66. So Gremlins was definitely the next closest to making the honorable mention. Another one that got very close was Reanimator. Reanimator was on 6 lists and peaked at a second place vote and received 62 total points.
Where was Night of the Demons? I feel a lot of people talk about that movie, so I'm surprised it's not anywhere.
Night of the Demons got no love at all. Night of the Demons only was on 3 lists total. It did receive 1 first place vote, though, on a list, but I think it was just me, Todd, and I think Calum might have put it on his. I think someone else in our Discord, maybe Raining Blood. I can't remember who, but it was only on 3 of the lists. It only received 34 points total. So
that's pretty low.
It is a weak showing for the Night of the Demons, unfortunately. Another one I thought that was surprising was Pet Sematary, because I find Pet Sematary to be a pretty iconic movie, but it only was on 4 of the 28 lists, and it peaked at a 3rd place vote on that one. Another one that surprised me a little bit was Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I thought I would see Killer Clowns from Outer Space on a lot more lists. It only made 4 lists, and it only got up to 7th on a list. So not a great showing for Killer Clowns, only receiving 14 points total on the list. What else we got here? Another one, I guess, iconic horror movie, iconic scene anyway, was Sleepaway Camp. Definitely a cult classic, but only made 2 lists, and only at its highest was a 9th place vote on
Well,
the
what
list.
about the Halloweens? I didn't see any Halloween love.
Thank you for mentioning that, actually, because Halloween 2 received 3 votes, but it received 2 first place votes.
Really?
Actually, yeah, it did. Yeah. So Halloween
Cool.
2 got so three votes total. It totaled 44 points. But yeah, 2 first place votes for that. Also, Halloween 4 received 1 vote, but it was high on their list at number 4. So some H4 love as well there. I believe Halloween 3 I think only made 1 list total, which I think that was a little surprising too in some ways, because I know that's another one that's a cult classic. So Halloween 3 didn't get much love either. As far as the Friday the 13th, other than the original, Friday 4 received the most love, getting on 3 lists and peaking at a 3rd place vote.
Was there any like off the wall, maybe not as mainstream
Sure.
80s wise? What we got?
Yes, the stuff
Okay.
got a vote, definitely a cult classic as well. Motel Hell receiving a 1 vote as well. Here's
That
one.
one's fucking weird, man.
Yeah, it is.
It's a weird one.
Here's a couple of good ones. Society received was on 1 ballot as well as Dario Argento's Opera. That was one I think that was
good.
most off. Yeah, that was one I think that was a little bit off the cuff that I didn't see much love for. Oh, here's one that was actually on 4 lists that received some high praise on the list, was The Blob. The Blob remake from the 1980s. That one peaked at a third place vote. So that one got, and then the other votes were in the mid range. One that didn't get a lot of love that was very close to making my honorable mentions was My Bloody Valentine. I love that movie. I love like the whole like minor character and stuff. That one was on 3 lists. It did peak at a 4th place vote on a ballot.
And Steve's got the shirt on today.
I do.
Yes.
2 movies that I know my wife put on her list that I didn't hear anything about: Beetlejuice and the Monster Squad. Was she the only one?
Yeah. No, she wasn't. Beetlejuice actually had a pretty decent showing. Well, I mean, by point wise, but it did make, it was on 4 of the 28 ballots. I just think most people didn't consider it horror, I guess, but it did peak with a 2nd place vote. So it did get pretty, and it also received a 3rd place vote and a place vote as well. So, it did on the list it was fairly high. The Monster Squad didn't get much love at all, sadly. And we're the Horror Squad podcast, and none of us even put it on our honorable mentions, or I was close to putting it on my honorable mention personally. But it only was on 2 of the 28 lists with 26 points total. So it received a 4th place vote and a 5th place vote at that. So, yeah. But yeah, let's see. Anything else here that might be interesting? Oh, Little Shop of Horrors. Little Shop of Horrors received a 1st place vote. It was on it was on 2 lists total for a total of 24 points. I'm trying to see if any other movies, if I didn't mention all 12 already, that did receive 1st place votes. I think I got.
Did anyone put Terminator in there by any chance?
No love for Terminator. No, I guess
I was just thinking. I mean, I don't personally think it's horror, but I know some people do.
Yeah, a little bit of Cronenberg love. You got besides The Fly, you got Videodrome, made a couple of lists as well. One that Something Wicked This Way Comes received a 3rd place vote. That's a movie I've never seen actually, but I know it's a Disney classic, right? I believe, or like a creepy Disney classic.
I didn't know it was a movie. I just know the book. Huh.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. Also, the Twin Peaks movie received a vote as well, which I've never seen.
Never seen any of that,
yeah. Yeah. Here's one I've never seen before. Dead Ringers made a list. Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. I've heard of it. It's on my Tubi list, I think. But
is it on Tubi? Let me see if it's on my Tubi.
Pretty sure.
I'll add it to the list. It could be a good 80s horror movie if it made someone's list. So
no Night of the Creeps love?
It might have made 1 or 2 lists. Let me see here. Yeah, neither Cooch made one list, just one. Yeah,
Interesting.
and not a great showing at six points total on that one. Cujo made it on 2 lists. Definitely a classic of the 80s. There was quite a few Friday movies. Friday 6 got some love. Friday 4, Friday 3D. So it was definitely maybe if everyone picked one together, another Friday sequel could have gotten on the list. I think surprising in a way that the original got the love over all the others. But I guess maybe people went with, well, without this, the original, the sequels wouldn't exist type deal.
Right. I was going to say, I couldn't believe how many Friday 13s were in the 80s. They came out pretty much every year from 1980 all the way to 89. It goes all the way to Manhattan, I think.
Yeah.
So
Freddy or Jason Goes to Hell's the 90s one.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy that they made 8 Friday the 13th in 9 years.
And then they haven't made one since 2009.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Bastards.
Right.
And also a hall of shame to 2 of our list senders for not checking their years and sending me a 70s and 90s movie. Ladies and gentlemen, Dawn of the Dead and Child's Play 2 not in the 80s. So Dawn of the Dead 70s, Child's Play 2 1990. So you were close, but just a little off.
Come back next year for the 70s list.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just kidding on those. Don't get offended for those 2 people. But what else got love? Ghoulies 2. Ghoulies got a little love. And yeah, I think that's really about it. Day of the Dead didn't get much love besides from Steve and Todd.
We like our Romero, man.
We do. Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I think that is pretty much it. And so thank you to everyone once again for sending in your master list. Oh, Pumpkinhead. There's another one, another classic, I think, 80s that, Now here's one, shocking that not one person, I think, gave any love to Puppet Master or Toxic Avenger. I thought maybe I would see it on at least one list for someone who loves their cheese, but no love for those 2 franchises.
There's a lot of stuff that
no trauma full moon love.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I'm, Basket Case, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, I guess, surprised that it didn't get any love at all. But it's a big decade, and there are some great movies, so not all that surprising, I guess. All right, so you guys wanted to get into some of the questions we got about the 80s and
yes, sir.
That. But before we do that, we have something very special for you guys. So I'm putting aside the Deadly Grounds coffee ads for a couple months. I know. I'm sorry. If you want to hear it, I can send you the file. You can listen to it at your leisure.
Come on.
I'll send it to you, no problem. But we have a very special message from a friend of the show, and I'm going to play it, and you're going to hear it for the next 2 months, so get used to it. So take it away.
It's me, Omri Katz, a.k.a. Max from Hocus Pocus. Just here to let you know I'm going to be in Salem, Massachusetts on October 22nd at the Silver Moon Comic Store starting at 1 p.m. I'm going to be signing some autographs and meeting fans and whatnot. And then after that, there's going to be a special screening and a Q&A hosted by the Horror Squad podcast at Cinema Salem. So I really look forward to seeing you guys there, and don't miss it.
All right. So thank you to Omri for that great message. Can't wait to do our event in October in Salem. It's going to be a great time. We will be full squad. It's going to be amazing. And I think it's going to be a great time. So definitely, if you can, come join us on October 22nd in Salem with Omri Kratz, a nice Hocus Pocus event.
And I just bought 2 new pieces of clothing, Horror Squad branded, for the Salem event.
Okay.
That was me.
You were
I
the
bought
one.
it. I was the one. I bought a hoodie and I bought a new T-shirt with our Halloween logo on it. So
Very
pumped.
Cool.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it's going to be a super fun event. Also, I have another announcement. If you can't make that event, the week before, Damien Maffei is going to be signing at Silver Moon Comics as well. Not full squad for that one. It's just going to be me. It's because Steve and Todd, obviously can't make it 2 weeks in a row. But if you want to come meet Damien, we had a great event with him last year. He's super awesome. So if you want to get your Haunt, Strangers Pray at Night, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the video game merch signed now because he's going to be a very big voice actor character in that video game coming up. You can get that. So he's going to have prints for that as well, he told me. So yeah, come on out to that event. That's going to be the week before Omri's, October 15th, signing from 1 to 5 at Silver Moon Comics as well.
Amazing. All right, let's get into those 1980s questions. You can ask us those questions on social media at the Horror Squad Podcast or on our Discord, where we got a lot of 80s chat and 80s love. And the first question is actually from Chuck. It is an audio question. This is a rejuvenated Chuck, who last week had just come out of surgery when he sent us his question. So he's feeling better, and he thanks everyone for all the love he got following his surgery. So Chuck, what is your first question?
Hey Horror Squad, Chuck here with a few questions. First question, what defines 80s horror?
Defines it.
I mean, I would say slashers. Like if someone just said define 80s horror, I would just say the slashers. Like they were just so prominent in the 80s, Michael, Jason, Freddy, Chucky, like that to me that was the 80s.
Okay. I'd go a different route and say 35 millimeter film that has a lot of color in it, because 70s is like dark and washed out, and 80s is like vibrant and like big pink sweaters and all that stuff. Also, let's be honest here, a lot of breasts. That was like a big theme in horror movies in the 80s. But I would also agree too with like slashers being like the cream of the crop for the 80s for sure.
I think what defines the 80s is simply choice. Whatever subgenre of horror you like, they have like 50 movies of it in the 80s. And it could be as weird as whatever weird thing you can think of, there's probably an 80s horror movie out there that's doing that exact thing. We had little creatures, we have puppets, we have ghosts, we have werewolves, we have slime, we have the stuff, we have, a creature in a basket. It just
got alligators.
Oh, yeah, we got everything. It's the 80s. It's such a smorgasbord. It's a buffet of horror. And it seemed like people would just make whatever the hell they wanted to. And it really led to some creative movies. And if you go outside of like the top 25 that everyone always talks about, which are great films, of course, because we just did a whole list on them, you'll find all sorts of weird little goofy gems. And that's why I love Tubi so much, because you can see a lot of those gems on that service. And yeah, that's what I think defines the 80s to me, is all those crazy, fun horror movies that are so far out there that I don't know if we'll ever see movies like that again, at least not to that extent or caliber. All right, Chuck, what is your second question?
The 1980s saw the introduction of home video, and horror benefited immensely from it. What were your top rentals?
Fuck, man.
Great question.
Do a whole show on video stores.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Night of the Demons for sure, because like that cover was, to me, is like iconic. Like it's just like burned into my brain forever. So Night of the Demons was definitely a hot rental for me. As far as others, I mean, all of the Friday the 13th, like for sure. Like I rented those, a ton of those, the Nightmare on Elm Streets, all the classic slashers for sure.
Yeah. Gosh, this is hard because I'm looking at like VHS tapes right now across from me, and Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 was one that jumped out because I still remember browsing, like, it was probably a Hollywood Video or Blockbuster, and the back of that VHS tape has like the, I believe it has the diner scene, like a little snippet of that, so that always stuck out to me. I did a lot of like just random ones too, like you would always shop by cover art, so you get like random piece of shit animal killing movies, and then you go like with the Friday 13th, but I'll think I'll go with Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 just because I distinctly have that memory of seeing that in the video aisle and like scaring me. So stick with that one.
Yeah. For those who didn't grow up in the 80s, you have to remember that not a lot of people owned VHS back then. Renting was really one of your only options to see these movies. I don't remember owning a lot of VHS until like the mid 90s. So everything was a rental. And the ones I remember most vividly, Evil Dead, the Ghoulies, because of that toilet. I remember, of course, the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, stuff like that. And I just loved going to the horror section and getting in trouble from my dad, who didn't want me in the horror section. Especially, I was always trying to sneak a peek at the, next door porn section with those cowboy doors that you could totally see through. Yeah, it was just a great memory of me checking out those covers and trying to convince him to rent stuff. He wouldn't do it often, but around the like early 90s is when he started watching horror movies with me, and we started watching stuff like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, stuff like that. So, but as far as just seeing the boxes, Evil Dead, the first Evil Dead 2 is the one that comes to mind the most. Like, it's had such a memorable cover.
Is it the skull?
It's a skull with the eye. Yeah, Phantom of the Opera of all things. Just there's a lot of movies like that that just marked me. But it wasn't until the early 90s I started actually renting them, and the Romero trilogy is probably the one that I remember most vividly renting with my dad. That'd be my answer. And Chuck, what is your final question?
With special effects dominating the 80s, did it turn people against the quote-unquote let their imagination scare them movies from previous generations and force them to want more blood, guts, and gore? Is that why we don't see many slow burn movies from the 80s and they're just now making a resurgence? Thanks, guys. Look forward to the episode. Can't wait. Super excited.
Interesting question for sure. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like, I come to think of it, I guess there weren't, like, I can't think of many like super slow burn horror movies in the 80s. I mean, I think The Shining is definitely one of them for sure. But yeah, other than that, I definitely think they definitely went more for, I think they knew they like could get away with just low budget horror in the 80s and people would like eat it up. So like that's just kind of what everyone went with, and like just like churned out these just like cheesy 80s horror movies and people were just eating them up.
Yeah, I mean, that's with technology, right? Like 70s, maybe you couldn't really pull a lot of that off, so it was more slow burn. 80s have technological breakthroughs, and then, of course you get into CGI, and then you have, 10,000 big epic fucking fantasy slaughter fest, you know what I mean? So it just goes with the times. But yeah, that's a good question. Besides Shining, there's not really one that sticks out to me that's less is more.
And The Shining was like 1980, so it's still like kind of bleeding out from the 70s, right? Yeah, the 80s were really just the decade of cool practical effects. Tom Savini was finally getting his feet wet after his Blue Zombies and Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that. Like, you could see the improvement just in Day of the Dead, for example, and a lot of the great effects artists were really getting a resurgence in the 1980s and stuff like that, which we hadn't seen since basically like the 40s 50s, when the Universal Monsters and stuff were going with the special effects. So yeah, I think people just want to show you what they can do in the 1980s, and it's not till later that we started going back into the slow burns and the kind of let your imagination do the work movies.
I wonder what Patrick Bateman's answer would be to the VHS rental question. I know obviously TCM, but I wonder what else that motherfucker, like, yeah, man, let's get freaking what's his face on the line, Christian Bale.
Yeah. We'll get right on that.
I think he'd be a big fan of Cannibal Holocaust.
Oh, for sure.
All right, so thank you, Chuck, for the questions. We really appreciate them. So the next one comes to us from Jackie Divine 94. First time asking a question, because I feel weird. Don't ever feel weird. We super appreciate every single question we get, so thank you very much for sending it. What 80s movie has not been remade do you think is due for a makeover?
Oh, never mind. Day of the Dead's been remade twice, but it needs a good remake.
Unsuccessfully. Yeah.
Day of the Dead needs someone like a Zack Snyder that loves the source material and will remake it with love, and a 2022 updated vision with improved graphics and writing and all that stuff. So, like we said, we covered it, but so a little bit of a cheating answer because it's been remade a couple times and has a TV show, but that one deserves a good, loving remake.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm gonna say this is a tough one. I just off the top of my head, I'm gonna go with Clown House because that movie actually like has a great premise, but it just it's overshadowed because it was directed by Victor Salva. But I think that movie could be like terrifying if put in the right hands today.
And not only was it directed by him, isn't that the movie that
that was the actual movie?
That was the movie he was arrested for. So yeah, definitely staying in the horror community on that. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of them have been remade. The ones I felt could use a remake. I'd like to see a lot of sequels or reimaginings, but they're not necessarily remakes. Like I think Gremlins is due for a resurgence, but I don't necessarily want to see a remake Gremlins because I think Gremlins look amazing as they are. I guess I'm going to go with something like the stuff that you mentioned earlier. Something goofy, and I really liked the idea of consumerism, or even and I love this movie, and I'm surprised it didn't get any love on the list. It came close to getting mine. They Live. I think it'd be cool to see They Live with today's issues versus the issues in the 1980s. So yeah, I'll say They Live then, as I think Jordan Peele can make a They Live. Actually, there was a lot of rumors that was what Nope was going to be about, if you remember, because when we see the girl without a face there at the show, a lot of people thought that was a reveal of basically the aliens, and it was a remake of They Live, but ended up not being. But I think Jordan Peele would make a great They Live remake.
Oh yeah. I don't know if They Live made any lists, Steve, now that you mention it. If it did, it only made like one at the most,
And maybe people didn't consider it because it's not super horror,
It's pretty it's definitely more sci-fi.
Right, exactly. But I thought about it. I love that movie, but ultimately I thought maybe it was too much on the sci-fi side. All right, so next questions, just gonna pull them up here. These are from the Discord. So the first ones are from Calum. Hey squad, the 80s is my favorite decade in horror, so to make a top 10 was incredibly difficult, and I enjoyed it. Thank you, Calum, for the list, by the way. With that said, I'm not an 80s kid, so I have no nostalgia for these movies, but I think all the films on my list are incredible. How much did nostalgia play into your rankings, or do you just love these movies regardless of nostalgia?
I mean, I love all 10 movies I put on my, and the honorable mentions. I mean, I love all the movies I put on my list. I think where I put them, some of them are based on nostalgia for sure, like Pet Sematary and Night of the Demons and stuff like that. Because like, are there better movies than Night of the Demons in the 80s? Like, absolutely. But that one is, definitely was heavily on the nostalgia for me. But my like top 5 definitely didn't. No nostalgia was played into it at all. I mean, those movies I think are just stand the test of time.
100% agree with everything you said. Mirror that completely. My standings are a little bit based on history, but they're still all good.
I went mostly with just how good the movies are. My number one is nostalgia. I do think Ghostbusters is a masterpiece, but Ghostbusters is definitely there because of my love for it. So I think nostalgia played a little part in my list, but overall, I think they're all, I stand by any of them being amazing movies. So his next question: if you could star in any movie in your top 10/honorable mentions, which would it be?
Star in? I would love to be a zombie in Day of the Dead. Just
that'd be cool.
Being able to point out, that's me. That's me.
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm gonna go with Night of the Demons. I think that would just be fun. Like it just seemed like such a fun set to be on. So I'll go with that one.
I'll do Ghostbusters. I think it'd be amazing to be a Ghostbuster, and I'd be doing cons to this day, just chilling on, as a Ghostbuster for the rest of time, and still getting, to appear in movies now. So
yeah,
it'd be a great gig. His next question: with the diversity that the 80s has to offer in terms of horror, action, comedy, sci-fi, musicals, which movies were you glad to see get recognition in our lists? Thanks, squad. This was a hell of a lot of fun.
Glad to get recognition in our lists. I mean, it's always nice to have people agree with what you like, right? But I think still, like, we could have made a top 30 and I would have not argued with any of them because they're all pretty fucking good.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I was obviously glad to see Dream Warriors get some love. Like, even though it didn't make the list, I was glad to see it make quite a few lists. My Bloody Valentine, like I said earlier, I think that is a great slasher that doesn't get enough love. So I was happy to see that on some lists as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what Todd said. All of the picks were really good. There's nothing I would be like, oh my god, no, why is that considered? Like, that's stupid. Right. There's so many great films in the 80s, and there's really no dumb answers at all. I'm happy to see 2 Evil Deads on the top 10. To see, I think it just proves just how fucking amazing that franchise is, and I was happy to see that. So that's probably the one thing that stood out, I guess, the most out of the lists. Next question is from Lana Del Beer. Which movies do you think have the best soundtracks? It could be scores or 80s music.
Oh, let's Return Living Dead, period. Best soundtrack, dude.
Yeah, I mean the 80, man, I think like every movie on my top 10 has a good soundtrack, honestly. Yeah, I mean Night of the Demons, love that soundtrack. I got it I have it on vinyl and it's amazing. The Shining, obviously, like that intro like to the I mean the whole like soundtrack is just so like great and atmospheric. Nightmare on Elm Street, amazing. Poltergeist, amazing. Like yeah, like all I'm going to say my whole top 10.
Yeah, I love the Ghostbusters soundtrack. I used to listen to it all the time as a kid. It's got some great songs, some great montage songs in there. The Shining's theme is just one of the most powerful in film history, my opinion. Nightmare on Elm Street, same thing. Man, that music is so friggin' iconic. It's there's a lot of soundtracks that came out of the top 10. Like music was very good in movies in the 80s. So yeah, for sure. Next question from Cody, Oddjobbers 007. When the younger generation asks you to recommend an 80s horror movie, what is everyone's first choice?
Ooh, I would go Nightmare on Elm Street. I think that's just like an iconic 80s horror movie that even, I think a newer generation would appreciate it. I don't think like some newer generation like wouldn't appreciate The Shining just because I feel like the newer generation's attention span, like most of them probably wouldn't, get that movie. So yeah, I think Nightmare would be the perfect one to suggest, or like maybe even like Poltergeist. I think would be a good one.
Agreed. I think it depends on age. If we're talking just starting out, I'd go like a Gremlins, Ghostbusters kind of thingy. But
Yeah.
like teenager, like my daughter's age, I think you'd go Night of the Demons. Like a super fun one. Nightmare on Elm Street, like you said, super fun one, and it still has some blood and scares in it. I think they had a sleepover when they watched Nightmare on Elm Street, actually. So I'll have to get her 2 cents on that. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. If it's a younger person, Ghostbusters. If it's slightly older, Nightmare on Elm Street, because Nightmare on Elm Street's the movie when I was a kid that everyone would be like, "Oh, you got to see this movie. It's super scary." Like it was the scary movie for people my age. So I think I would like to pass that down to the current generation.
Be a good triple feature would be you start off with Ghostbusters, and then you get progressively worse with Nightmare on Elm Street, and then you just go fucking end the night with Evil Dead.
There you go.
Just like get them comfortable, and then just like slowly escalate it from there.
And then go to Campbell Holocaust.
Yeah, absolutely. Next series of questions are from Kayla. Listening to past decade episodes today, haven't heard questions from Mandy, so I'm stealing some of her questions. Mandy does listen. Hi, Mandy. So she didn't send any questions this year, but thank you for Kayla for sending these in. So these are basically the 1980s awards that we're going to have this year. So the first one, Best Male Performance.
Go ahead, Joe. Say it. Say it.
I mean, come on. Jack Nicholson, The Shining. I mean, obviously.
Me too. I wrote them down.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, it's just it's one of the best performances, period. So forget the horror of the 80s, period. That's it.
So fucking good.
Best female performance.
Say it, Joe.
Ooh.
Oh, it's
I don't
not
know
unanimous.
I don't know. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I'm going with Dee Wallace in Cujo.
Oh, I went with Shelley Duvall from Shining.
Oh, okay.
And I went with Sigourney Weaver from Aliens.
She's perfect. She's fucking perfect.
Yes,
She's perfect.
There you go. That's good. I
Get away
actually,
from her, you bitch.
I actually picked Dee Wallace for the bumper at the beginning of the episode, so it's perfect.
Oh, nice.
For
Perfect.
that. Okay. Biggest disappointment.
I felt like I couldn't answer this because if I was like 15-year-old in 1985, I guess I feel, you know what I mean? Like these didn't come out, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like we're watching Halloween 2 or Halloween 3 next year. Oh, that was disappointing. Like, can you say it was disappointing if you went back to watch a movie that's been released for 30 years?
I think you could if you didn't, because like we didn't have the internet back then, so like it's not like you
True,
could go on
true.
Letterboxd or IMDb and be like, oh, what did other people think of this movie? So like
Okay, makes
all
sense.
the ones I watch are like fresh. So for me, I chose A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Obviously like loved the first one, loved Freddy. I I just don't like part 2. Like, I know it's gotten like a resurgence over the years and stuff like that, but for me, like, I just feel like it's so different from the rest of the franchise, and like they broke the rules of Freddy, like how he could like just come out of the dream world without being
Mhm.
pulled or anything. He could just like do whatever the fuck he wanted, and I really dislike that. So so that's why I just didn't like it.
All right.
So the way I did this is, like I said before, I rewatched a shit ton of 80s films preparing for this list. So I'm going on my biggest disappointment of my rewatches from the past year. And to me, it was easily The Ghoulies. The Ghoulies is not a good film. It really is not a good film. The Ghoulies 2 and The Ghoulies 3, fucking awesome. The original Ghoulies, whew, it was a struggle to watch. It's basically battling wizards with a couple little ghoulies in the mix, but barely. Like, they barely appear in the movie. It's terrible. So if you're going to watch the Ghoulies, watch Ghoulies 2 and Ghoulies Go to College. That's my recommendation and my disappointment.
All right, I pulled one up. You guys make good points. And that's going to be 88's Fright Night Part 2. Fright Night Part 1's number 2, my top 10. And number 2 is just not good, man. Brewster's in college, and like what worked for him in high school does not work for him as a college student, being a little whiny little brat. So Fright Night Part 2, watched it once, never need to see it again.
Yeah, it's a good choice. Actually, I didn't even know until like this past week when Chuck told me that they made a sequel to the remake. I had no fucking idea.
I have that on Blu-ray, and unfortunately, it sucks.
Yeah, it's that shocked me. I was like, I never even heard of this. So, wow. Next one, movie you thought was good but doesn't hold up today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, I'm gonna go with Demons. You know, I remembered enjoying it, when I was younger, but I went and rewatched it within the last year or two, and it didn't hold up for me. I just was not a big fan of it. So I know a lot of people love that movie, have the nostalgia for it. I didn't really have the nostalgia for it, so that might be a big factor for me. But yeah, just did not enjoy Demons my newest go around.
This was a hard one. But yeah, I'll steal Joe's answer, and I kind of get it. Like, the setting's cool and the theater and everything, and like the demon mask kind of thing. But I haven't even seen it. Have you seen the sequel? I wonder if it's.
No.
Yeah, I didn't even have any urge to see a sequel after seeing the first one. But I did see the first one for the first time, maybe like within 5 years. So like you, I didn't have like the history with it.
I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but it's one of my rewatches, and I just wasn't into it at all. And I thought I remembered loving it as a kid, and that's The Burbs. I was bored to death watching it, and I remembered it being really good. I like the premise. I like Tom Hanks. And this movie just didn't do it for me. I was just super bored throughout it. So that's my answer.
Is that the one with like the evil Muppets?
No,
that's
Meet
the Feebles.
Yeah, that's the musical Meet the Feebles. I know it's like the neighbor is like a scientist or
Tom
something,
Hanks.
and Tom Hanks. Yeah,
I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. Did it get any love on the list, Joe?
No, none.
Oh, okay, good. I won't piss off too many people then. Most overrated of the 1980s.
That's a tough one too, honestly, because like the 80s was full of great stuff. But I'm gonna make Steve sad here, and I'm gonna say The Changeling, and that's because honestly, I had never seen it in the 80s, so I had like nothing to go on. And then we reviewed it for the episode Steve chose it for, and yeah, I just didn't love it. I think there's some good moments in it, but overall, I just felt it was overlong and a bit boring at times.
All right, this one's gonna upset some people too, but I just don't like Hellraiser. I've tried. I've seen it 3-4 times maybe, because I'm like, all right, what am I missing? Cenobites, fuck, they're dope, but the movie as a whole I just don't like. And then also, spoiler, it's the 70s episode in about a year. Phantasm's overrated too. But Hellraiser, besides the Cenobites, I think it's dull.
I would agree that Phantasm's overrated. I mean, I enjoyed it like when I finally watched it, but like, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't make my top 10 or anything like that.
I'm gonna get so much fucking hate for this. It's like so much hate, and I want to say I like the movie. I just think it's overrated, and that's Friday the 13th.
No.
The original. Like, there's some good moments and everything, but objectively, the twist doesn't make sense. You don't see Pamela Voorhees really until like the end. You know, you don't see her much. So to have her as the killer, it was kind of like a cop out to me. Like, there's nothing super interesting about it. I think there are better kills, there are better movies in the franchise. I like it, but I don't think it's like the best movie ever. And I think had they not made sequels, this would be a totally forgotten movie. You know, it's only because they made sequels later with Jason that this movie is so revered today. And finally, most underrated.
I had a lot of trouble with this one because, like, I really did not know what to do because it was like like all of the movies of the '80s. I feel like have like a fan base. For me, I just decided to go with Silver Bullet. I just really enjoy that movie. I don't know why, but you know, it definitely doesn't have like a huge fan base or anything for it. But it's just Gary Busey is just quite a character in it, and the werewolf transformation scene is really cool. He's like that dream sequence one is awesome, and the fucking silver bullet he rides thing is fucking really cool. So yeah.
That movie I don't like. And Gary Busey's having some issues. He needs to keep his hands to
He
himself,
is, yeah,
allegedly.
apparently.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Mine's Maniac Cop, dude. Not a lot of love for Maniac Cop. It's got Bruce Campbell. It spawned, I believe, 2 sequels, which part 2, I have a poster of, I think it's Superior, but that came in at 90, I believe. But Maniac Cop, man, it's fucking good. Like, check it out.
So mine is one that actually I watched because of our podcast. We didn't do a review on it, but we did a retrospective on the director, and that's From Beyond. From Beyond is a fucking fun film, and definitely. I really enjoyed it. I'd never seen it before, and I just really loved watching it. It's such a weird movie, but there's a lot to love about it. There's a lot of like really cool effects and characters and surprising moments and
lingerie. And...
yeah, it's got everything, man. It's Ken Foree, of course, and you know, it's awesome. So that would be my pick.
Great choice.
All right. So thank you, Kayla, for those award questions. And moving on to Shaylin, little 3-chord me. As you were compiling your lists, how different was the end result from when you started? Pretty similar or drastically different?
Very similar. I only changed my list once. Like originally I had Child's Play in my top 10 and I dropped it out. But other than that, like I just kept it, like, because I know if I kept looking at it, I would have just changed it so many times. So I just did it.
Yeah, I changed it multiple times just because it was super hard. So it changed. I originally had Fright Night at number 1 for the longest time. I had The Shining at number 1 for a long time, and then it shifted, and it fucking like my number 10 shifted. So I was just like, I'm done. I think I submitted to you yesterday, so or the day before, Sunday. So shifted quite a bit.
You have to remember, I've been working on this list for a year. So as I was rewatching everything, so movies that were at one time on my top 10 that I kicked off, you have The Changeling, Poltergeist, Reanimator, Fright Night, Gremlins, Child's Play, Creepshow, American Werewolf in London, Lost Boys, and Pet Sematary. And that's it. Yeah. So those are the movies that were at one point in my top 10. And through rewatches and just thinking about it, just didn't quite make it. Like American Werewolf in London was in my top 10 for a long time. It was the last movie I rewatched. I watched it last week, and it has some of the best transformations ever, but there's a lot of time where he's just contemplating life. You know, he's not actually the werewolf all that often in the movie. And I find his transformation amazing, but his final werewolf form, yeah, yeah, it's all right. It's not great. It's all right. I actually thought his like little ghost friend was one of the best parts of that movie. So yeah, I changed a lot over the course of the year, and I'm sure I'll do the same thing with the 70s. Her next question: is there anything from the 80s that isn't around anymore that you could bring back? Could be a place, product, or whatever you want, even if it's something you never got to experience, and maybe that's why you'd like to bring it back.
Video stores.
Yeah.
Video stores, man. Love video stores. I used to spend so much time there through like high school and junior high. We just walk, we walked down there, we rode our bikes down there, and then eventually you get a car and you drive down there and just 4 for $20 deals, 5 for $25. It's just, video stores are amazing, and it sucks that those are gone.
Yeah. I agree. And when I used to go, when Sam was living in Kansas and I used to go visit her, they still had Family Dollars there. And like I was like, what? So like I was like,
Family
we gotta
Video?
stop. Yeah, Family Video. Yeah. So I was like, well, we gotta stop. So like we stopped and we went in there, and it was like such like a throwback. It was awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm the only one out of the three of us that's actually like really lived through the 80s. You know, I was
Right,
8
yeah.
when the 80s finished. So top of my head, easy answer, Mr. T cereal. God, I love the Mr. T cereal. I was obsessed with Mr. T as a kid. Yeah, the best cereal ever. So please bring it back, someone. You know, give it the Crystal Pepsi movement or whatever, the high C movement. I want Mr. T cereal back. Other than that, though, I just miss, you know, watching movies. Like I'd go to my parents' basement on the shag orange carpet and the wood panel walls and the, you know, the CRT TV with the big like wood thing around it, and watch cartoons and watch horror movies. And it's just, I missed that time. And I was so, you know, I remember I think we talked about in this podcast maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, Todd and I miss believing in stuff like ghost stories and aliens and cryptids and stuff like that. I was such an innocent time. You know, if we saw like a book with ghost pictures or whatever, like I believe them, you know, because I didn't believe people would want to deceive us in the way that people do now. Like now I don't believe a fucking thing from anything online, you know? And I just miss that feeling, I think, of the 80s, the innocence that I felt in the 80s. So that's what I would miss about the 80s. And video stores, of course. I mean, that's a given. I fucking love video stores. Okay, so that was all for her questions. And our final set of questions here, they are from Mondo. Of the following movies, which do you think you have the best chance of surviving? The Thing, Cujo, Christine, or The Gremlins?
Sorry for the dog lovers, but I'll kill that fucking dog. So Cujo's eating shit.
Not if you're trapped in the car, Todd, with no gun or nothing.
Yeah.
You remember it was
killing
like
that dog.
It's like 120 degrees in that car, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm also not a 5-year-old or whatever.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I think Cujo would probably be your best option out of those four.
See, for me, I think it'd be Christine.
Yeah,
Cujo
that car can go fast. You cannot run it.
Yeah, but Cujo can go into like pretty tight spaces. He's a big dog, but
Yeah.
he can like fit into doors and stuff. If you go into a house, Christine ain't getting you. You know, go up the stairs, you're done. Christine's just waiting outside. So
Have you
Yeah.
have you seen Twister? That car went right up those stairs.
yeah.
Widest / strongest stairs of all time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's funny, dude. Also, just don't be a bully in Christine and you're good.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I think we all agree The Thing is probably the one where you're the most fucked.
Oh, you're fucked, dude. Even if you win, you're fucked like McGreedy and Childs.
Right.
Freeze to death.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Christine is one that didn't get much love on the 80s list.
I thought about it.
I thought about it too, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought about it.
Awesome. His next question. Do you think the Brundlefly could have been killed with a can of Raid?
It's a big can of Raid.
Yeah, no
200-pound man. Just get one of those fly traps you hang from the ceiling, and he couldn't resist.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, the paper. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, a pretty big one, but sure.
Human-sized.
Yeah.
No, I had the perfect weapon against the Brundlefly when I was growing up, and that's my grandmother. Man, her and a fly swatter in the 80s and 90s in her cottage. Holy shit, man. She's the nicest, sweetest woman in the world. I mean, she's still alive, but she's the nicest, sweetest woman in the world. But if a fly got in the house, oh shit, it's like the Terminator. Like she'd take that fucking rubber fly swatter and she would not stop until that motherfucker was dead.
It's like Ripley, get away from my pie, you bitch.
Right? So, yeah.
How does it kill the fly? Was it like if someone had a shotgun or something?
Yeah.
She kills him. Yeah.
Right.
Like, because he realizes, like, he's never going to come back from it. So
Fucking weird.
He like asks her to kill him. Yeah. It's like a mercy killing.
Yeah, he's pretty fucking like fucked by the end there. That's,
Yeah.
And the final question for this week. Who wins in a foot race between the three of you? I can beat Chuck, especially now that he's one knee down. Love you, mean it.
Undo used to be fast.
I'll go with Todd. Yeah, I think Todd would definitely.
Yeah.
Todd was in the military, so he's definitely had some training. Yeah.
It's been a while since I'm in the military, but I still race my kids because try to motivate them by saying they'll never beat me in anything. So like tough love. So
I'm
we'll like
short,
race
I
down
have
hills and
short
shit. Yeah. Mondo used to be fast. I've seen him chase after suspects before. So
Oh, nice.
back before he retired.
All right. So thank you everyone for the questions. We could not do it without you. It was a lot of fun reminiscing about the 1980s. Oh boy, am I excited about the 70s. So it's going to be a fun decade to discuss, but we got a year for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like 70s is easier, to be honest.
I don't know. Like I'm telling you, the top 6 I have pretty much set in stone. Those other 4, it's open game. Like I'm going to start watching movies and trying to find, I already have a whole list of nominees of things I need to rewatch, and I'm excited.
How many 80s movies did you end up watching, roughly?
Oh, it's got to be in like
100?
Like no, probably more like 60. A lot of them I remembered. I didn't need to revisit. Like I didn't go through all the Nightmare on Elm Streets that were in the 80s and the Friday the 13th. Like I've seen those enough. It was just the ones that I either hadn't seen or hadn't seen in a long time, and I'd throw in some. Oh, Tubi has this movie. It's only an hour 15 or an hour 20. I'll watch it. I watch a lot of. I couldn't believe how many movies I saw about people like feeding food to people where it's either human meat or like it's amazing how many of the 80s have had those like
a lot of
Motel
cannibals
Hell
in the 80s.
A lot of cannibals. Like I didn't realize there were so many, but
there's a whole genre of them.
It's fun. There's a lot of. I really enjoy doing it. And I still pop in movies I haven't seen stuff, but it was a fun rewatch year.
Definitely.
Predictions of the overall number 1 list for 70s. What do you got?
Oh, Halloween, probably number 1.
I'm thinking Exorcist.
Exorcist.
I think Exorcist will take it.
Popular. Texas Chainsaw will be really popular too.
Jaws could be up there.
Jaws would be popular. Some people might leave Jaws off their list because like Jaws is always the one I see people being like, "Oh, Jaws isn't a horror movie," which that's when I think 100% is a horror movie. But I see that a lot. I see that in a lot of horror groups where people say Jaws isn't a horror movie.
Interesting. The Alligator's a horror movie.
Yeah.
Piranha.
Whatever. I'm with you. Jaws is a horror movie, sure.
Fired up.
But blood-sucking aliens, no, not a horror movie apparently.
They got acid blood.
They got acid blood. There's a ton of them. They're fucking spitting everywhere. It's dark. It's in space. No,
they got
not horror.
2 mouths.
But Jaws that we see like 3 times in the movie, definitely horror.
Alien will get a lot of love too, for sure.
Yeah. It'll be a lower 10 for me, like a 7 probably. Hills of Eyes.
If I were to choose one, I think Halloween will get the number 1.
Halloween.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see though. So start getting those lists ready, folks. Be prepared for next year. Let's get even a bigger master list for next time, so I can spend 4 hours on the list next time. Todd, I'm surprised you didn't pick Psycho 2 for your most underrated 80s. I know you love that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. I didn't even think of that. There's so many to not to forget.
Right?
Have you seen Psycho 2?
Such a packed year. No, I still haven't. I still haven't watched it.
Watch it, man. It's like a straight up slasher this time.
I'm going. I definitely will.
Number 3 is good too, and number 4 is shit because McGarris directs it. And fuck him.
Oh, come on.
Oh, it's terrible. He did The Fly 2 as well.
Yeah, he's done a lot of not great stuff.
A lot of sequels.
I'll give him credit for The Shining though. Shining TV movie was decent.
Ugh.
Hocus Pocus.
He wrote
the screenplay that got adapted, so it's like he barely did much.
When's that movie come out? Hocus Pocus 2?
September 27th? 30th?
Oh. September? Yep. Cool. Sweet.
And
we get to watch Hocus Pocus with Omri.
That's right.
That's to be fun.
And you can too. So
yes. Yeah. You can too. Tickets are going to be on sale for that very soon. We're waiting to announce like the event on social medias and stuff until the tickets go on sale. So I think we'll give you guys, like the listeners, a heads up before the tickets go on sale, so you'll be ready before everyone else to kind of jump on it, because we're expecting it to sell out. So yeah, it's going to be very cool.
Awesome. So next week we're between 2 movies. It depends if Joe works overtime or not next week. So we're either going to do Day Shift, which is a new movie over on Netflix that just released last week. And if Joe is not there, we're going to do World War Z, which Todd and I are looking forward to do because we both love the book. So you can hear our thoughts on the movie as well. So it'll be one of those two movies next week. And if it is World War Z, the week after will be Day Shift when Joe comes back.
Mm-hmm. And next week, we also have a very big interview with actress Kate Bosworth. I interviewed her yesterday, and honestly, it was one of my favorite interviews I've done, actually. She was like so nice, so warm, so welcoming. She's like actually like a big horror fan too. So, you know, we talked about some of her like favorite horror movies, and then we touched on the Straw Dogs remake she was in. We touched on The Domestics and Before I Wake, her other horror movie. She talked a little bit about working with Mike Flanagan. And then she was on to promote her new movie, The Immaculate Room, which is a new thriller with her and Emile Hirsch, which drops the day of this episode, I believe, August 19th, which I believe is this Friday. So check out The Immaculate Room as well. I'm going to talk about it on What Watch next week. But spoiler alert, it was pretty good.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, for another fun decade episode. A lot of fun. Now I'm working on my 2022 list for I watched like 3 in the last couple days. Working hard on that one. It's going to be this year needs to get better movies. That's what I'm going to say about it.
And I still have no idea what Day Shift is, nor who's in it, nor what it's about.
Perfect.
I'm assuming it's a cop movie. Day
Nope.
Shift. Okay, well, wrong.
It's a horror movie. So
don't know what kind of if it's a creature, a slasher, or anything. So I'm just gonna put it on.
It's like horror comedy, so we'll give you at least that.
Okay.
And we won't tell you who's in it though.
Yeah, and it's funny. I've heard it's horrible.
Surprise.
I've heard it's amazing. So
really, okay,
Right.
it's one of those.
yeah.
I'm hearing the same about Bodies too. I've heard.
I
people say it's
just
horrible,
learned
people
that
say
was
it's
a
amazing.
thing, and I looked and it
Yeah.
had the Pete Davidson guy, right? He's in it,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
which I think he's funny. So
Yeah. I want to watch Fall too. I don't know if that falls in the horror
Fall.
category or not. But it
I know.
looks
I saw good things about it. So
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
I'll wait till it to be on streaming, I guess.
I've
Yeah,
seen people compare it to The Shallows, oddly enough.
Well, yeah, they're stuck on the top of a tower, right? So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just saw Men become available for me. What did you think about it? Quickly again, you watched it?
Yeah. It's good. Like overall, will it make my top 10 though? Probably not. I mean, the way this year is going, it maybe would be like
Okay.
bottom top 10. But it's a weird one, man. That's all I'll say.
Gotta plug it in
It's
soon.
it's definitely a weird one. I think it's worth it just for like the ending like alone, because it's fucking some crazy body horror, and that's all I'll say.
All right,
But it's an A24 movie, so just be prepared.
nice.
All right. Well, that is it, ladies and gentlemen, for our 1980s episode. Thank you once again to everyone that submitted a list. We really appreciate you. Don't forget to follow us on our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Discord. Yeah, if you want to join our Discord, all you gotta do is just private message us, and we will send you the link to join the Discord community, which is fastly growing. We got book clubs over there, movie clubs, a little bit of everything for you. So if you're a horror fan, you definitely want to join in on that fun. And yeah, that is it. So we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye. See ya.
See ya.